Okay, so
Boom.
boom, we're live, bringing you facts hot and heavy from the streets of Kabul to the cities of LA and Melbourne. The pioneers of Afghan metal, District Unknown, Lamar, and Kais are here with Travis Beard, the man himself, from the front lines of war against terror to making documentaries and mentoring the band. We're here to tell you our stories, good, ugly, and bad. Rockabul The Podcast. Here we are live. All right. So, how are you doing?
Hi. Hey.
How is this? What happened earlier, man? What happened, bro?
I think we went into some kind of internet void, some kind of black hole, and we got sucked into another parallel universe. And it was just weird. But hey, we're back in the real world. Well, apparently this is the real world, but this is social media, so it's not really the real world, is it? So God knows where we are.
And of course, nothing can be perfect. And now we can't get Kais back here for some reason. I'm going to invite him again. That's all. All right, my friend. So what's been happening? Tell me quickly. This is the first live podcast.
What's up?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go, man.
The man himself, the guitars, the rhythm,
What's
the bass.
up, guys? How are you?
Good.
Good.
Good, man.
Hey guys, how you doing, bro? Yeah, long time no see. Yeah.
No, I haven't seen you. It's good to see you back, man.
Yeah. Hey, you had a haircut.
So
That's
happy.
cool. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
What's up? What's going on, man?
I'm in lockdown, but I just had a baby girl about 2 months ago, so it's pretty much the same with or without lockdown. We don't leave the house very much. We have no social life, so nothing's really changed. But hopefully, lockdown will finish, and maybe my baby will grow up really quickly, and I can be free again.
God bless, man. What's happening with you, man?
Nothing much, man. Life isn't normal. Everybody's enjoying their life because after almost a crazy year in the United States, everybody's now doing after the vaccine, all these things. Now everybody's enjoying going hang out, parties, beach.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's fun. It's fun week and days, man.
All right.
Life is normal. Yeah.
Good to hear that, man. Your lives have gotten normal. Sydney for Mr. Travis has gone in a lockdown. It's getting worse every day. And for us, we live in apparently in another country, a country in itself, Western Australia. It's pretty much blocked for the entire world. So yeah, we have our own thing going on. We have an anonymous state here. Anyway, so let's start with our first live podcast, boys. What's happening? What's up with the Rockabul Podcast? A lot of people have been asking, what is the agenda of this podcast? What's they gonna hear or know that they haven't seen in the film Rockabul? What's up with this, man?
The behind the scenes, all the stuff that I had to cut out of the film because I couldn't put it in. There'll be a lot of that stuff. I mean, I'm only here because I'm getting paid really well to make these appearances. So besides that,
as usual.
As usual. No. I'm here because I want to be here. I made a film about you guys, and I thought that would be the end of the story, and I would leave Afghanistan behind me. But no, this nightmare keeps chasing me around and around. So I'm here. I'm very happy to be with my two brothers from other mothers, and sharing one of our most sort of passionate subjects, which is your country, your home, your homeland, and my second home, Afghanistan.
Good one, my friend. Good one. You're always welcome. And yes, indeed, you have spent enough time there to call it your second home. Kais, so what's your take on this, man?
For me, this podcast is really I want to share my story that before District Unknown, who I was, and also the experience during we have the band, and also obviously people saw the movie, and there's a lot that it's not told in the story. So I just want to share what happened between, and also I just want to share like my music background, what I'm doing now. So it's all the ideas like generally in my music idea, man. You know. So I just want to share my experience about the music, about my life in Afghanistan, and my life in United States, man.
Cool, man. Yeah, very well said, both of you guys. I think the whole purpose of this podcast started with me and Kais just uh, having a banter online after pretty much after a lot of years, and then the whole world being in a lockdown, we plan to do this podcast to share all the little bits and pieces, details of our life before District Unknown or Rockabul, and obviously after that, which is a very big topic in itself, and the people like us. We're just trying to convey this message to the youngsters in Afghanistan, especially, who are trying to start what we had started 10 or 12 years ago. And perhaps we could help them with our personally learned experiences, that the state that they are at right now, we were in the same spot. And how did we got through that? How did we achieve what we achieved, be it small or big? Hopefully that would inspire them and motivate them to do what they want to do now. Especially, it should be said that it's about the creative aspect. It's for the artists, and every rebel has an artist in their heart. We have to say that we cannot really ignore the politics, as Mr. Travis Beard has pointed out. Politics cannot be ignored, but we will not really focus on a lot of political specific topics. One city, because the whole lives of Afghans are uh, impacted by international or local politics. So we will talk about that when we would need to. Otherwise, this is not a political podcast. This is not to downgrade anyone or whoever. We just want to share our stories. We are individual entity as we were back in Afghanistan, District Unknown. All right, so that was the little small introduction to the podcast we have here live, and I think we lost Travis Beat
We
for
lost
some
Travis,
reason.
yeah.
Are you still
Yeah, I'm here.
there? He's
We
still
lost
there.
Travis. Yeah, cool, man. Yeah.
So I'm gonna invite him again. That's all good. All right. So now that we have the pointers, uh, let me just bring this. Okay,
Welcome
he's
back.
Here. All right.
No, sorry about that. We had a little technical
worries,
issue on
man.
my end. As soon as you start talking about soon as you start talking about politics, I fucked off. No, I'm joking.
As I said, we're not gonna do that in depth, man. All right. So before we get into our bread and butter of our first live Rockabul podcast here, I'm gonna say that we have a sponsor for today. We usually have sponsors, and that's
right, cool, man.
that's
Shoot
what
it out.
keeps the whole podcast going. Yes, a lot of money, a lot of money. From today, we have a sponsor from a news agency, which is an independent news called BBW on BBC.
BBW.
Listen to that name, my friend. BBW on BBC, my friend.
BBW.
All right. Now, unlike the common belief, get your heads out of the gutter, my friends, who are watching this. This has nothing to do with the 90% of internet what you have calling BBWs and BBCs. No, I know what you mean. We're talking about the big blue whale and the big black cockatoo. That's our new agency. All right, so when you see a cockatoo on top of a big blue whale, man, that's BBW and BBC News. And we're gonna. I know people have dirty mind, my friend. It's not my fault. All right. So,
Lamar, can I ask? Like, I know you're a very resourceful man, but how did you come up with that sponsor? Did you like go swimming into the ocean and find a big blue whale, and then find a big black cockatoo on top of the whale? How does that work?
Okay. If you just had to ask, man. So as you know, I live in Australia, right? And
lots of whales.
I just had a sip of my coffee, and there was a spider in there, and that's our life, man. That's our life. That's how we roll. Now, Kais just left. Why is people keep leaving, man? I haven't even started. My own team is leaving. You don't want to listen to me? All right, whatever.
We're jumping shit. All right, keep going. So, get this show rolling, man.
Yeah. All right, so midway, we're gonna give you some live updates about the international and local politics, Afghanistan, and internationally, obviously. Brought to you by exclusively BBW on BBC. That's it. Those two. Yeah. All right. So before we do any of this, my friend, anyways, all right. So I'm gonna have to keep walking.
Hey guys, can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we can see you. We can hear you, my friend. All right. So what? So I'm just gonna turn the camera off for a little bit, but I'm gonna start with Travis Beard to just kick this thing off right away, man. Tell us where you were before 2006, man, and how did you actually come to know about Afghanistan, and why did you want it to become Afghanistan? Give us something brief, my friend.
Very briefly, 2001, the Twin Towers had fallen. I was in the UK, and I was planning to go to Yemen for a holiday, as you do.
Cool.
But Yemen closed its borders to tourists, so I was like, where am I going to go? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
I went to Iran because I have friends in Iran, so I was hanging out in Iran, and then I met this journalist, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come to Afghanistan?" And I went, Sure. Never been to Afghanistan before. Sounded interesting. So I crossed the border with him illegally. It was in November 2001. So, 2 months after the Twin Towers went down. And we entered Nimroz, which is far western Afghanistan, right down in the valley, the Triangle of Death, which is Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan borders meeting.
Yep.
A big area for gun smuggling and drug smuggling.
Mm-hmm.
And we entered there and we reported on the refugee plight. As the Americans came in from the northeast, we came in from the southwest towards Kandahar that way. And I was in Afghanistan and I drank the local water, which was a mistake because I got dysentery. I got very sick. But I also contracted what we now refer to as the Afghan bug, which is a cultural addiction to the country of Afghanistan. And I fell in love with the country, and I eventually moved in 2006 to Afghanistan and lived there for 7 years, and that's pretty much it.
Beautiful, nice. That's a very exotic, heroic story. Well, if we haven't really pointed it out specifically, so once you came into Afghanistan, the specific nature of your job was photojournalism, right?
Yeah.
And you were a freelance journalist, am I right?
Yeah, so I'd travel around the world. I'd find stories mostly about, socio-economical, humanitarian issues, whatever. And I would photograph those stories and then try and sell them to magazines and newspapers. That was kind of my thing.
What was your impression before you came into Afghanistan? What did you know about Afghanistan?
Well, that's the funny thing is I didn't know a lot. I mean, obviously, we all had heard of the Taliban. We knew about the Mujahideen era and, the Soviet occupation. But I'd spent a lot of time in Iran. And so I was kind of quite focused on Iranian politics, Iranian culture, which is in some ways similar, but not really the same as Afghanistan. But honestly, I really didn't know a lot. I was quite not ignorant, I guess is the kind of the right word. But I also it was just one of those countries where when you heard the name Afghanistan, you just had this kind of mythical quality to it. It was somewhere mysterious because no one would go there because it was not on the tourist route. Obviously, there was war for many, many years, and it was just one of those places where everyone was like, oh, yeah, the place you don't go to. And of course, I was the person who went, oh, that's the place I want to go to. And so I honestly, I knew nothing at the start.
We're gonna come back to your time in Iran and the contrast between what you did in Iran and what actually eventually happened in Afghanistan, which we could say that was a turn of the fate of your whole future operations. Guys, where do you want to start? How far can you take us back in your life, man? Take us back during the internal Afghan war when you were a kid, when you were growing up, because you were the only member of District Unknown who never left Afghanistan. You were born and raised in Afghanistan. So
for me, man, my life was like I always feel like I was a child who was born in a war, like seen, like grew up in a war, and like pretty like I have seen all like war in all my life, nothing else, you know. So I was born in a war, like I'm like 32 now. So like all my life was in like fight and all these crazy political crazy time in Afghanistan. So like when I was growing up, like I have the crazy thing like I always talk about is like every time I'm talking about is like dead bodies, like fighting on the street fight, the civil war inside Kabul, and we didn't have a school to go, and we didn't have any entertainment.
I lost you there. I can't hear you. Guys, guys, Travis, are you there?
I will talk and he can just move his lips. So we will pretend it's
Fair
him.
enough. Okay, I'm pretty sure you would know enough about them anyways. Go back, and then come back, bro.
Well,
Yeah.
Lamar, in the interim, so I'll take over for a second. In the interim, while Kaiser's leaving the room and coming back in, can you tell us about your earliest memories of Afghanistan?
Yes, sure. If there's anyone in this podcast who hasn't heard the name Lamar, show me. Everyone knows me, who I am. All right, so jokes apart. Yeah, I was born in Afghanistan. My dad was Air Force officer, Air Force instructor, and during the start of the very start of the civil war, we had to leave. We had to go to India, and so since I was probably 3, 4, I was in India. I pretty much grew up in India, and the start of 2000, I think, or very end of 90s, we came back, and it was still the Taliban regime. So I do have a taste of that as well, of how the life was back then during the Taliban regime, and we couldn't really live there in Afghanistan during that time. So I spent probably 5, 6 years in Pakistan, which turned out to be all right, because I did get my whole influence of the Western music and whatnot from there. So I think my story before the ban isn't really very interesting, unlike you and Kais. I have lived.
Yeah, but tell us about when you first came to Afghanistan. So you've been living in India, you've been living in Pakistan, you got all your influences, but then you obviously came back to Kabul. What was that first memory, that first experience like for you?
Would you believe that when I came back, that's when this whole the band story actually starts? Because I kind of came in and went back quite frequently, but we were living in Pakistan even then. So until the early 2006, we were still there, but we were traveling in between. Because I went to India again to study, and then I came back in the mid 2006, and since then I was in Afghanistan. So for me, it was 2006, mid 2006 was my start of the whole exposure of living in Afghanistan as.
Okay, so you crossed the border at Torkham, or you land at Kabul airport, whichever way you came in. What was that first smell, that first taste, that first vision that you saw? Tell us about that memory of coming home to your own country.
It smelled like a rose.
And it definitely didn't smell like a rose. No, 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 no.
Now, look, for me, Afghanistan had a very different image. Maybe coming from my family. Now, I could say that I was born with silver spoon in my mouth. So for me, the image of Afghanistan and the expectations of life in Afghanistan was very different to a lot of people. So when I came back to Afghanistan the first time, I don't really remember. I was young, probably 10, 11, 12. So I still have a very vivid memory. But obviously, being the Taliban regime, we could cover my part even with Kais's own experiences because it was pretty much the same, and I was there for a month or something. But when I came back in 2006, I think that's when Afghanistan had really progressed. NATO was there, the Americans were there, and we had a decent government. It was much more safer and much more peaceful. But unlike I'm pretty sure both of you guys or other members of this can know, I've had a very first-hand experience of the war in Afghanistan because I have served with the Spanish forces from 2007 till 2000 and start of 9. So yeah, so I've seen that end of it. But for me, like I didn't really have much expectations. I was people knew me, and we had our own house and all that. And so really didn't much expectations. Image, yeah, I mean, it was devastated country. It was shocking. It was empty. It was dark. It was dull. It was gray. But we saw it progress slowly, and I'm lucky to have seen that it did progress from that to where it was in 2011 or 10 when I left. So I think that, yeah, I mean, that is all I can say in a
All right, let's jump over to
my
Kais. And Kais, do you want to
So,
finish your experience of
yeah, sorry, I
before we
don't know
lost you?
what's going on with my phone. Like,
Just
yeah,
roll
it's
on,
crazy.
man.
Yeah. So, like, as I mentioned, I grew up in a war, and like I have seen nothing just dead and crazy tank and rocket, and that was our entertainment when I grew up as a kid. So the school was like we didn't have school, we didn't have nothing. During the war. So basically, whenever we had fun to go do something, like I used to love watching football or go to the stadium. We would see at the middle of like playing people soccer in the Ghazi Stadium, there was Taliban would come and like hang people or shot a woman. So that was the stuff that I grew up in Afghanistan. So pretty much I didn't have anything to enjoy life. Like all my memories, like bad stuff about my country. So until I meet you guys after like 2001, so when the youth came. So like life little bit changed better slowly until like till now, man. It still is crazy going on. So like pretty my story is like crazy, man. Like I didn't have like much good stuff in Afghanistan when I grew up, man.
If you compare the media exposure, what you had for entertainment from during the mid 90s to after 2001, what was the contrast of material that you had your hands on? I mean, what sort of stuff could you enjoy as in like TV or music or whatever from before Taliban to after 2001?
So before Taliban, I just remember like I was like maybe like 5 years. I don't remember. There was TVs and stuff, but it was like Afghans were like in middle class. My family was, we didn't have TVs and stuff to watch TV or have like radio to or have something to listen to music. So we didn't have that. And also during the Taliban, like that was the craziest time, like all my life, like we weren't allowed to listen to music or like to play music or have or we didn't have like TV or local station, nothing. Everything was prohibited, you know. So you weren't allowed to listen to music or watch TV or like basically anything entertainment was like something. If they would cut you, they would like hang you or like chop your head, chop your hand, something like that. So like pretty like
Chop your
not.
hand. Chop your hand for watching TV. Is it because they thought you were into porn or something? Chop
No,
his
the thing
hands.
is,
So he wasn't into porn.
no, the
Chopping the
thing is,
hands was when you were stealing something. So obviously, if you stole,
it
they would
was
take the hand.
and also it was stealing, and also if you have like back in the days it was cassette, you know, like video cassette. So if you would have all those things, they would like bring you in the square. They would put some like they would like black your face. Yeah, black and
okay.
yeah, put you on the donkey and like tell
Oh
everybody
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
Did you know, Travis, that was one of the Taliban's shaming techniques, that they would paint your
punishment. Yeah,
face black and put you on a donkey and make you ride around the city just so they could say that he has done wrong. So I think
yeah.
you could get that punishment for adultery as well, right?
So they would put you on the donkey and kind of parade you around the city. Was that the purpose?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the purpose. And people were laughing at you, throwing a stone at you, or like saying bad stuff about you, you know. So like that was the
And
punishment.
then they would kill you, or that was just the punishment by
No,
itself.
no, they wouldn't kill you for like if they would fine. But I believe there was like a jail time for that too, you know. Like I don't know,
Right.
it was
Obviously,
6 months or something,
yeah.
but
I
like
mean,
there was a jail time for if they would catch you with the video cassette, you know, or listening
yeah.
to music or something, having a TV at your home, something like that. They would
But
punish
but
you for
but
that.
but but there was a culture of like black market where people would exchange like movies, like Bollywood movies and songs and shit, right? Have you done that?
They would. Yes, I did. I was hiding the video cassette to my turban. I used to go to school with the turban. So whenever
Okay,
I would go to the black
okay.
market, I would get the video cassette. I would put it into my turban.
Did
into
your turban have like a bit sticking out to the side like
no.
this?
The thing is like no. Whenever I went to school, so when I was coming back, I would put the video cassette into turban. I would put it in my bag. So whenever they would call like the Taliban call Amr ibn Maruf, the guys that they were like searching people, and they would search my bag. They would see, oh, it's your turban. You're coming from school. I would say yes. They would say, okay, go. Like I was hiding like video cassette with my turbans, you know. So yeah, that was the escape
What
part,
was
man.
how much Western music had you uh, experienced during that time?
Zero. Like I was just
You have no idea about
zero,
any.
no idea about like Western pop, rock, metal music, nothing. Just like folk
Had you
Afghan music.
had you heard from your mom and dad or uncles that they used to be into it back in the early 80s or 70s, that they were into Western music? Have you heard any of the names of the bands or anything now?
I would hear about like Western music all the time. Like my mom used to like tell a story about like the thing is like my uncles from my mom's side, they're all musicians. So one of my uncle he sang, the other played drums. So like my mom used to like tell the story like they would perform in the studio and I mean in concert hall and they would like I was like, Mom, you're joking. Like I don't believe it, but like that was the truth, you know, that was the fact that they used to experience back in the days, and they would tell me the story. I wouldn't believe it because I would never seen those things in my eyes, you know.
Hey,
Just
can
so
I
you
can I
guys know,
jump in for a second with a little fact that I learnt last week. Now, this might not be true, but I was listening to a podcast about global melodies and where music started from. So if you go back to the Middle Ages, we had the first music in Europe, and obviously Asia had its music. Anyway, so they were talking about Afghanistan, and Ahmad Zaire came up, right? And people out there might not know, but Ahmad Zaire was referred to as the Elvis of Afghanistan. He was a big pop star. in the 60s and 70s, very popular. But what I learned was that Ahmad Zaire used to appropriate Western songs and put Afghan lyrics to them. So apparently he took Johnny Cash, he took Elvis, he took the Beatles, and took their melodies, just the melody, and then would put an Afghan kind of rhythm under it, so going more traditional, and then he would redo the lyrics, not the same words as the Beatles, but new lyrics, and in a way Afghanicize the song, and then release it, and he became this huge star. That was, you know, probably the biggest pop rock star ever in your country.
Which ever will be.
Which ever will be. But he didn't even write the melodies. I thought that was a really fascinating little tidbit. I didn't know that.
No, for that, that's a very well-known fact between Afghans. Every Afghan knows that, even though, because he was a rebel, right? In his own respect. He came from, his father was the prime minister of Afghanistan. Now, music back then being so taboo, he was kicked out of his home because his dad was like, I'm a PM and you can't be singing and dancing around. But he was a rebel because he went to study music in India and he came back. And when he came back, when he got popular, he had the best composers in Afghanistan, the best producers, musicians.
The Ustads.
All the studs, you know, that was with him because he had the creativity. Because as you said, the Afghan National Radio and Television Network, which is known by the Afghan radio, Radio Afghanistan, artists were not allowed to perform in the radio stations covering songs. Right? So artists were not allowed. He was the only one who would do it anyways.
Right. Because he was famous,
He hasn't only done Western music, he has covered Indian music and Iranian as well. Now, the composers who have worked with him, who have composed great pieces for very well-known, legendary Iranian musicians as well. So their compositions are being used in there as well. With Ahmad Zaire, he was good with that. He used the idea of Western music, but he used very famous Sufi or the Eastern mystic poets' poems like Rumi and Hafiz and Khayyam and all these people. He would use their poems and they would arrange them, the pieces in a way where if you hadn't heard the original song, you wouldn't know that it's actually covered. You know, so,
I mean, it's basically what all music is. If you look at the sort of the ingredients of music, we get down to 12 notes in the Western scale, right? A through to G. And if you go into Eastern scales, you get semi and quarter notes and so forth. But generally, there's 12 notes, right? And so the amount of combinations you can get from that, there's a lot, sure, but we actually do repeat the same progressions, the same melodies throughout culture, throughout the global culture. And a progression in, let's say, Indonesia is pretty much exactly the same as a progression in Sweden. It's just appropriated differently. So he wasn't actually doing anything wrong. He wasn't stealing. He was just reappropriating it for his culture.
If you because I can see one of our friends, Claire here, says that like to hear that. You can always go and search Ahmad Zaire and you can look for his song called Digar Ashkam Marez.
Maybe Lamar, spell Ahmad Zaire for the listeners so they can actually Google it.
Okay, so that would be AHMAD, which is Alpha Hotel Mike Alpha Delta, and then Zahir, that would be Zulu Alpha Hotel Zahir India.
Z-A-H. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks guys. That's way quicker than Lamar's military breakdown of the alphabet. Anyway, let's move on. We digressed to Ahmad Zaire. Let's get back to our conversation.
Now, saying that, just it does relates to District Unknown's inspirations as well, and how did they start making music, their own songs. It all relates to that, because if I want to quote somebody famous from the Western rock and roll music, Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie is a very well-known musician and filmmaker, and he said in an interview, he said that Black Sabbath came up with all the riffs. We couldn't really make anything new. All we do is just go slow, fast on those riffs. You know, so same with Ahmed Zahir. If somebody wants to create music now today in Afghanistan, be any genre, you cannot do anything new that he hasn't done. Yeah. He had covered it all, you know. So rock music, coming back to rock music, Travis, Afghanistan rock music, when you came into Afghanistan, you being a rock musician yourself as a kid, did you came across that there was rock music in Afghanistan, or used to be back in the early days, or you had no idea whatsoever?
Well, when I first came to Afghanistan, I came as a journalist. I didn't come as a musician, and I wasn't really practicing my musicianship at the time. So I didn't come with any intentions of finding music. I came to follow the conflict and to report on the situation at hand. And I remember the first time I went to a party, an expat party in one of these kind of guest house compounds. It was down in Wazir Bakhan. And they had this kind of big garden, walled-in garden at the compound. And I walked in, and there's probably 50 people milling around, drinks. It's summer, the weather is good, everyone's having light conversation. And there was this band playing. And I'll never forget it. And I was just like, what the fuck is that? I just didn't expect to see live music. Not saying that I didn't expect that Afghans had live music. I just didn't expect to see a rock band and playing. And the band at the time was White City. I wasn't a member of the band at that time. And look, they were playing covers, kind of bad covers, you know, Americana, kind of rock, that kind of scene. But hey, fuck, man, it was live music. So I was engrossed. And, you know, that was like late 2006, early 2007. And as far as I know, back then, they were the only band in the scene. Because there wasn't a scene, actually. That was it.
Okay, so just to clarify, White City was an expat band, all foreigners.
Yes.
And just to clarify, Wazir Barkhan was what we call the green zoned area inside Kabul. That was one of the most prolific, safest VIP area.
Yeah.
Well, technically it was Shastrak, but Wazir Barkhan was next door. It was more the diplomatic area, so a lot of embassies there.
Yeah.
A lot of big NGOs, so people with money, and a lot of narco texture, or as we call poppy palaces. So a lot of the warlords and the drug lords, and just the really kind of rich criminals lived in that area, funny enough. It also had a lot of whorehouses in that area and some good Chinese restaurants. But anyway, we digress.
No. So you from that, man. Give us one of the stories of that. Come on, please.
That's in my book, so you have to buy my book to read that story. Yeah.
And what was the name of your book? Which still isn't out yet.
The book isn't out yet, but we're talking to publishers at the moment. The book is called "The Bullet is Faster Than the Bike," and the bike means the motorcycle, because the book's about riding motorcycles in Afghanistan.
And you promise there is stories of the Chinese whorehouses in it, because I wouldn't.
There is one story of a Chinese whorehouse
because he was there.
Because I
It was before your time. It was before your time. It was early whorehouse days. Anyway, we're not going into that right now. But what I was trying to say was this was an affluent area, and that's why there were parties of such. But I remember that first instance when I saw the band, and I was like, wait a second, Afghanistan, rock music, what the fuck? And I think, whether it's true or not, but I do believe that Morcha, the Afghan band, they claim that they started a lot earlier than Kabul Dreams. Kabul Dreams came around 2009, and we were the first people to put them on stage, an Afghan band. But apparently Morcha was around from like 2007 or 2008, but they were in Herat, so we didn't know of them.
The idea of Kabul Dreams came from a band and or orchestral band called Arya Band.
Audio band,
Now,
yeah.
these are the
Yes, Arya.
people.
Yep, I remember Arya. Yep.
So these are the people who had a music institute where I actually started to learn guitar back in
Yeah.
2006. I went to them first, and these boys came back from Iran because they were living and they were raised in Iran. So I think their whole idea of Kabul Dream came from that
Right.
place. But even till 2006 and 7, even 8, I had no idea that they were gonna do this. But I think because the whole orchestra kinda separated, they went their own ways, Europe and whatnot, and then
Even Audio band, they weren't like playing rock music. They were like traditional, like they
no,
would
no,
mix
no,
like
they
Iran
had,
music and
yeah,
Iranian and
yeah,
Afghan. So it
they
was,
were very Afghan party music, as we say. They would
yeah.
perform in weddings and whatnot. So, guys, rock music, Afghanistan. Have you ever heard about it? The Afghan rock music. Was there any uh, uh, genre of rock music in Afghanistan?
No, like until 2006 or 2009. Like before that, I have never heard of like rock music or like about like a rock band existed in Afghanistan before or after that, you know?
Because you know that Ahmad Zair was considered sort of a rock and roll musician. Ahmad Zair was one of those rock and roll musicians. We had this band called the Five Brothers.
Yeah, the
They were
five,
rock and roll
yeah,
back in the 70s. We had a band called the Stars.
the stars,
Yes,
yeah,
the
like
Stars.
Sitara, yeah,
Now,
Sitara.
people say the Stars were technically the first or the biggest Afghan rock
Yes.
band because
Yes.
Ahmad Zair wasn't really rock. He was kind of
Yeah,
pop, folk pop.
No. He wasn't
Yeah.
rock. But
No.
if you look at Elvis Presley being rock and roll, you know what I mean? If
Well,
you
he
look at
was in the
Elvis
early
being rock and
days.
roll,
When you look at Elvis early on, when he did Jailhouse Rock and you know Hound Dog, like that was rock and roll.
yeah.
But obviously
Yeah.
he digressed into pharmaceuticals and burgers and everything else. But the Stars were sort of known to be, you know, that kind of hippie movie. There's a lot of hippies were moving through Afghanistan in the 70s. You know, the hippie trail went from London all the way through to Delhi in India. And part of that stopover was Afghanistan. And when I screened Rockabul in many cities, I'd always get these older people, like in their 70s, come up and going, "Oh, Travis, I loved your film. It reminded me of my time in Afghanistan." I'm like, "When were you there?" They said, "Oh, 1970s."
Yeah.
And the stories they had from Afghanistan in the 70s just sounded like it was, you know, very bohemian. Fashion and culture was very European. And it was a psychedelic time. I.e., that's why music like the Stars came out.
Yeah, it was actually known that back in the early 70s and late 60s, Afghanistan was known as the flower heaven. The flower heaven. And
there you go.
And it's not about the opium or hashish. It was about the roses. People love roses. They came in love roses.
I reckon some of those hippies were looking for hashish.
No, it wasn't fucking tulips and roses. They were
They weren't smoking. They weren't smoking roses. That's for sure.
No, that's what. Well, it helps having ganja with roses around you. It puts you in a good mood. All right, so coming back to this whole rock and roll and you coming to Afghanistan, doing your own job, you are not expecting anything whatsoever musically. Qais being the guy who hasn't really heard anything Western, he's only heard that things existed which he couldn't even imagine that it was true. Then me, who had come out of this whole neighboring countries, traveling through, studying, whatnot, I had a good sense of understanding about some bands, Michael Jackson or NSYNC or whatever, Backstreet Boys and whatnot.
NSYNC, yeah.
Bye.
All right.
So coming back to 2000, and what was the year, Heis, when we actually started the initiative of trying to make a band? Because it was your older brother and my best friend who's now in Germany.
Yeah, like
you were not really involved.
no, I wasn't. I do remember like you and Zubair, our friend, like you guys went to India, you know, in 2006, I
Yeah,
believe, you know, it was
yeah,
2010.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
guys went for 6 months, like you guys came back after like 6 months. I do remember like we came to your house and you played it was Eid, you know, Eid celebration. So you played a song on and we were like, what the hell is this, you know, like, and you said that it's like rock and roll metal kind of like music. And I do remember like we were like jumping like on the couches, you know, in your house, like all the four of us, you know. I didn't know like that was something that would give me energy, and I never heard that kind of sound. Obviously with music, like I heard before with Bullet and all those crazy bombulas, but not with music. So that gave me something like I was like, man, anything is this, like I want to be like learn, I want to do something to learn how, like I want to be in it, you know, like I want to feel it, you know. So this is when we decide, like remember like you, my elder brother, and also Zubair were like forming a band like rock, or it wasn't like metal band, I
Metal
believe it
band.
was.
Let me say this, man. All right,
It was,
so
yeah.
Travis may this know or may not, because the whole idea of forming a heavy metal band, it had started very early on, and the band was named ZFL. So that's Zulu Foxtrot Lima, ZFL.
Actually, it was you guys' initial name, yeah, like Zubair Lamar.
Yeah, yeah,
So that
yeah,
was, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that. How did I not know that?
And,
And there was
and you know
Kais
what?
missing. ZFLQ.
The the inspiration for that band and the whole initiative of having a band came from Judas Priest's Double Desk album, the all-time great songs of Judas Priest. And when we heard that, I came up with the sort of explanation what that music was. I told the boys, I think that's disco metal.
Oh, disco metal. I like that.
Have you heard that? All right, so I was like,
you always were a bit disco, actually, Lamar. I think you've got the hidden disco gene somewhere in there.
Well, you want me to show you some moves, brother? You want me to? Okay. So there was an American diplomat, very high-ranked diplomat, and he was having dinner with my dad at Kabul City Center, the very top floor. They had a kind of a hotel there. You know what?
Yeah, it's in my book. Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
It's in your book.
So we used to go. So we used to go and chase girls up there because there were some air hostesses. Ooh. So we would go. Yeah. All right. So once I got caught there. Once I got
wait a second. The story I tell is the total opposite. You used to go to the bottom floor to the cafe, and you would sit 10 meters apart from the girls because you were too scared to talk to them.
No, bro. I was legendary, my friend. I was the legend. I was known as the legend of catching fishes, my friend. So I was a fisherman before I even came to Australia. This doesn't really attract me, these fishes, man. So what happened is that we would go down there, sit there, buy a banana smoothie, because apparently it's good for the men's sexual activities. That's all the Afghan men do.
And also they add
banana smoothies.
And also they add raw eggs, you know, raw eggs with banana smoothies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like
so.
And some dates, it's good.
If you really mean business, because you're going to visit one of those Chinese whorehouses, you add to some dates, and everyone would know this guy's going for an operation. It was an off night. Anyways, so we would be there hanging out. Everyone was, and these air hostesses from Comair would come there Uzbeks and Russians, and it was like you put canaries among hyenas. Okay. It was like every hyena had the biggest tool, and they would show off their gold watches or their money and shit, whatever. So, anyways, I was a hunter, my friend, so I did hunt a lot. But so in order to do that,
you're a hungry hunter, weren't you?
bro, come on.
Every
All those
every
banana
Afghan
smoothies
kid
and eggs and bacon.
I'm so hungry, so hungry. I haven't eaten in so long.
Only bananas. So then we would chase them up to go and talk to them, you know, maybe buy them some dinner or something. And then my dad caught me there. He was there. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Oh, nothing. We just came to have a juice and stuff." And he was like, "I thought you usually sit downstairs. What are you doing up here?" Nothing. Anyways, blah blah. So there was this American.
What was he doing there?
Chasing my
Good
heart.
facts.
like father, like son. Yeah.
But this American diplomat asked me, "So, what do you do, young man?" And I was like, "I have a band." And he was like, "Whoa, a band?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "What sort of a band?" I said, "Disco metal." And he was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, disco metal."
Did the band exist yet, or are you just making up what you wanted the band?
There were like 3 people, like 4 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Yeah.
Did you have instruments?
Guys,
No.
yeah, we had.
No.
Yeah, dude, we had the V.
You just.
Yeah, I had the V.
You had just the
I had
acoustic
the
guitar,
V.
like when we were talking about the full. We
And the
didn't have
V.
like an electric guitar. We didn't have
The-
back then.
The V was there when we were coming back from the city with the V on my shoulder. You remember that? And the ISAF boys were like, and the ISAF boys were like, "Are you guys a band?" and blah blah blah. You remember that?
So that
Like, it was
kind of.
those days.
Oh,
No, it
so
was
those
those
were
days.
the
It
days.
was.
Oh, I thought that.
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
that okay, before me. Okay. Sorry, man.
Yeah. Well, so ZFL was kind of being trained instrumentally with audio band, which turned out to be what was that band called? Rockabul Dreams. Anyways, so this American diplomat asked me, "So what do you guys play?" I said, "Disco metal." And then he said, "What is the name of the band?" I said, "ZFL, the Metal Gods." And you should have seen the laugh on this guy's face. We were metal gods before I knew how to play a power chord, my friend. Because
with the long hair and with the chain and cursing, man.
Yeah, because he gave my dad a DVD of Walk the Line, Johnny Cash. So he said, "Your son might like this music." So yeah, man, that was the early freaking days before. This week unknown. Guys, what stories you have from ZFL? Zauber Folot Bolahu. Wait. Can you translate the name of the band Zauber Folot Bolahu? What does it mean?
Me? Zauber, it's like, to be honest, Zauber Folot Bolahu. It's like metal.
Travis has no idea about this name or this whole period, right?
Like
it's even new for him.
Very
Zauber Folot Bolahu. It was like the dissolved metal by hot blood. Look at that, so metal, my friend. So even then we were so metal.
We were talking about metal. We were looking like metal, but we wouldn't play any like shit, man. We didn't know how to tune. So we were hanging out like through all Afghanistan, like Kabul Center, Wazir Akbar Khan, but we were like, "Oh, you guys are a band." We would say, "Yeah, we were a band," but we wouldn't play any shit, man. You know, I do remember.
So give me the story of buying the first V. the first view that I bought? Where did we buy it from, and how?
So the thing is, with my background, my dad is from Logar, so he doesn't like music. So I was like, he always punished me. Like I was always like begging him to buy me like keyboard or like guitar. He was like saying no, like it's a bad thing for our families. So I do remember like he was giving me money to go to like computer classes. So I was escaping computer classes. I was saving all those money. I do remember like one day, like Lamar said, there's a store in Mandai. So there's a store, guitar store. We have to buy our first guitar if we want to having a band or we practicing guitar. So like I have like 3,000 Afghani and my brother and Lamar. Like we all went to like this small crazy store in the Afghanon, and we finally bought.
What year was this?
That was 2017, I believe. Yeah, it was 2000.
How much money is 3,000?
2007. Sorry, 17. I said some. Yeah, 2007.
How much money is 3,000 Afghanis? How much money is that cost?
3,000
US?
Afghani, maybe $15. $15. 15 or.
So you bought a guitar for $15.
Was it 15?
$15?
Is that 15? No, wait.
In the documentary.
Oh, it's
in the documentary,
yeah,
we wrote $60. So at the time, the equivalent was $60 in conversion.
Yeah, $60. Sorry, man. Like, I'm bad with math. I'm a musician. I'm bad with math, so it's fine. So like we went to that store. We bought our first guitar. We didn't have money to get a taxi and to go to Lamar house because I wasn't allowed to get my guitar and my brother to get our guitar to our house. So like we took our guitar, we walked, I believe like 5 miles. I don't know how many kilometers, and like because I live in US, so I'd say 5 miles. Yeah. So we were walking from the Avanon to Kuala Lumpur, like with our guitar with long hair, and everybody was cursing because they would call like, do you guys have tambur? Tambur is like Afghan instrument. So they were like, oh, look at these tambur players. So like we were like walking like this, okay? Damburachi, yeah. Damburachi. So
Can
finally,
you imagine, Travis? Can you imagine being a young sort of teenagers, right? Walking in the center of the most busiest precinct of a city like Kabul, so congested, right? And carrying an instrument where people are yelling and shouting from each direction, any sort of disgrace or cursing or swearing at you only because you're carrying an musical instrument on your shoulder, right?
Even they didn't know which kind of instrument. They would say like tambur, like local kind of like instrument, you know? Yeah.
What would be the impact on the moral of those teenagers if it would have happened to you in Australia when you were a teenager?
I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question because you know the answer. I mean, I can't imagine it because I grew up in a very free country. I was lucky to have, music lessons from the age of 12. I used to walk to my guitar teacher's house with my guitar. That was the normal situation. I mean, you could ask me the question now and I'm not surprised because I've been living your knowledge for many years. But if you had to ask me when I first got to Afghanistan or before I went to Afghanistan, I would have not been able to relate to this because I didn't come from that kind of world.
But that would affect or have a very large impact on the psychology or the motivation of those kids, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is something that attracted me to your sort of merry band of misfits was that, you were against the odds, even when you were, later on in the band, not even just those early years, people just thought you guys were a threat. And I used to sit there and go, a threat to what? I mean, there's this war out there. There's this big conflict going on and there's people dying every single day. And you're worried about a kid with a guitar. That's not the big problem here in this country. But for some reason, people actually thought it was a big issue and they thought that you were trying to, coerce the youth into, ridiculous belief systems to do with, ridiculous stuff
That's
that we
all
won't even
bullshit,
go
man,
into.
yeah.
It's all bullshit. But I mean, this is kind of, we saw it in Norway, and it happened. It happened with the black metal movement, and you know, people died there because they thought that these musicians were a threat. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I think it's a massive misconception that's got nothing to do with Afghanistan. You know, it's totally you know, it's just a stigma that follows metal music around the world.
I'm going to go back to where Kais left, but coming back to you, taking the same scenario where we kids were at, we were being abused on the streets because of we had musical instruments on our shoulders in the early days. Did you ever face any sort of that judgment from the Afghan society for anything that you did before this whole music scene? Did you ever face anything like that which made you feel like, holy shit, this is harder than I thought? This place is pretty wild, you know?
Kais or me?
No, it was you. You.
See, oh, sorry, I thought that question was for Kais. I was like, waiting for Kais. Sorry, what was the question again?
It was to you. My friend, not before 12. Hey, it's already 12. Sorry, my bad. My bad.
Yeah.
I was thinking if there was an equal situation for you ever in Afghanistan, which you were kind of judged or misjudged like we kids were because of our instruments, when you came into Afghanistan for your journalism, did you ever face anything like that? Judged from the society and the crowd?
Yeah, I mean nothing that. Yeah, I mean a lot of the time. Yeah, sure. I mean, I had a sort of situation where I'd always get myself into situations, whether because I was riding motorcycles or because I was trying to photograph the wrong thing, or because I was going into the wrong areas that I shouldn't be going into. I was constantly negotiating with police. You know, here's a good example, right? And this is also in my book, so you can read about it.
That's what I want.
I used to have, I had motorcycle gloves that I would wear because I rode a motorcycle in Afghanistan, right? And so I had the motorcycle gloves on a clip, like a little Caribbean that I would put on my belt. So when I would go into the Ministry of Finance or to a shop or wherever, I put the gloves on my belt because, you know, I don't want to be holding on to gloves when I'm trying to talk to people, whatever. Anyway, I used to put them on the back of my my jeans, yeah, on my belt. And the Afghans would go, ha, 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 you've got your hands on your ass, you know, you've got your hands on your coonie.
I've never heard that.
What? I'm like, what the fuck? It happened all the time, right? Yeah. And I was just like, come on, guys, seriously, it's not my hands, it's my gloves, but whatever. So anyway, I took the gloves and I put them around the front, and then they would start going, look, you got your hands on your dick, you got your hands on your dick. And I was like, I mean, I can't win, right? So I ended up having to sort of put them on the side here. That was the only safe place.
Dude, I have no idea. That's a good one, though. That's
a good one. Yeah.
I can expect that from the Afghans, yeah, but that's a good one.
Yeah, it happens.
Fair enough.
But no, I mean, look here. We have a question, actually. There's a question from someone.
Yes.
Hi, guys. Can you speak about what you courage to practice your music even while you were being shamed in Afghanistan? I mean, yeah, look, tell me this, right? You guys have got this pressure. You've got social pressure outside on the street. You've got social pressure at home because your parents don't want you to play this music. You've got social pressure in regards to your society, particularly the religious community who don't want you to play it. It's pretty much almost everyone against what you're wanting to do. What drives you to keep doing this and not stop and go back to the safety of just not making music?
Well, that's why I was trying to go back and forth between you guys. It's only because I wanted to create this whole scene of, we were all sort of in the same situation. We were all being shamed. We were all being bullied. We were all being abused by some way or other, right? And what I was trying to do is bring us all together. How did we all came together and started this whole initiative of this music or the band or the film, it's because we all never gave up, right? So I wanted to kind of make this
Why?
connections
Tell
between
us
us.
why.
So
Tell
we're
us
gonna go
why.
first with Kais. Why did you keep playing?
For me, as I mentioned, like I grew up, I didn't have nothing with the music entertainment, anything like that. So even like the Taliban would catch me, would kill me, I wouldn't care about it, because that was the only hope, and that was the only thing that was keeping me moving on in life and enjoy being present. And that was everything, like music. Like when I was into metal music, that was my whole world, so I wasn't, those kind of curse, or like people would say something crazy stuff, even my dad was like against it, I wouldn't care about it because I never had anything in my life. So like that was the music was something that would give me courage to raise my voice and play to the young kids and enjoy my life back in the days in Afghanistan.
From my side, I have a very philosophical answer to this. First of all, Silk Tiger, I would really convey my most respectful greetings to you, ma'am. Silk Tiger is a very brilliant dancer. She does artistic pieces on Afghan and Persian music. So thank you very much for being here. I would say that for me, it is a sort of a paradox. You don't know what art form you're going to choose, or the art form chooses you. Okay, so for us, specifically for me, why I never stopped practicing, or why did all this abuse and this bullying ever stop me from doing what I wanted to do, this music? I think is in my personality, and my personality sort of related to the genre of the music that we eventually started to play. Now, if I say I was a pop singer, Afghan pop musician, maybe I would have been discouraged by this whole bullying, and I know a lot of people did get that. But for us, there was a connection between me wanting to play metal, me being the person, the individual, the personality that gung-ho, don't care, don't give a fudge about what the people say, and I want to do what this is. So we all of us.
Fudge.
So I think this is kind of common between all of us, even including Travis, who survived in Afghanistan for all these years because of that attitude. Kais survived and did what he did. I did what I did. Pedram, Qasim, Yusuf, Sully, all these other boys. We did what we did because we had the attitude. I call it the creative rebellion because of that. We were rebels. And all this bullying and shaming, cursing, swearing from the people, from the crowd, from the society never bothered me, but it actually fueled what I wanted to do, because that's what I wanted to talk about or against.
Nice.
And my genre of music, that's why I chose that genre, because that was in me. Now, I don't know if I chose it or it chose me, but I'm pretty sure if I was into Afghan pop, I would have left it a long time ago. I wouldn't have carrying a keyboard on my shoulder, walking around when people were screaming at me on the roads. I remember when we were going to one of the gigs in Afghanistan, to one of these new bands coming up when we were established, sort of a band back then. And I was coming from my office, going directly to the German Institute of Language.
I remember that gig.
Institute. Yep. So I finished from work. I had my band shirt on. I think it was a Maiden shirt, and I had long hair, so I had it in a ponytail. I always had my hat like this to hide my hair, so I had a goatee. I had my backpack from my office, and I'm walking through Chorei Zambak, which is called the Lotus roundabout. It's based in a place which has always been dangerous, conflicted, because it has routes or ways to Shashtarak and President Barkhan and the
Under the
Ministry of Defense.
president
So
policy.
it's a very, yeah, and it's surrounded by the embassies, Chinese, Iranian, German, UK, all that. So I was walking past this, and the National Defense Security boys, the Afghan intelligence, operational forces were always there. And while I was walking past in this whole crowd, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. in the evening, where everyone is going home and it's traffic jam, and these people are yelling at me, "Hey, terrorists, 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 get him!" Now just imagine, this whole traffic would look at me, right? And I have my headphones on, I'm blasting anathema,
Wow.
and it's doom metal just blasting in my ears. And I looked at them, I smiled at them, I just walked past. They could say whatever the fuck they wanted, you know. But I knew that next song I write, it's about that shit. You know, I knew that. Now I think I've hopefully answered your question.
Good answer.
Good answer, man.
Type.
Good
Oh,
job.
well, so before we go more in depth, I think we have covered some really good bases of very early days of Travis Beard, the man with the beard, the baddest expat beard in Afghanistan. And guys, I'm gonna come up with some local news, man. We have to talk about the current situation, and this segment is sponsored by our very own independent news agency, BBW on BBC.
Okay.
I love BBWs, and I have no issues with BBCs, man. These big black cockatoos with big blue whales, man. Beautiful, beautiful creatures. So the news. So let's go to get your dirty minds out of the gutter, my friends. We're going local politics, Afghanistan. Bagram Air Base. Bagram Air Base. Oh, I have my news written somewhere. Sorry, because I had to note them down. It's very important news. So that's where I write it down.
Very important thing, man. That was valuable to me back in the day.
Bro, during COVID, this is the most valuable thing in our right.
Exactly.
So so Bagram Air Base, the U.S. forces from the Bagram Air Base have evacuated during the night, the blind of the night. All right, and no one knew about it. They just flew away, packed up everything. They just left. That was one of the biggest military and air bases in Afghanistan. That was the center of the operations from day one. And Bagram Air Base does have a significant position as far as military is concerned, because even the Russians had one of their biggest air bases in Bagram, and it's very significant. But the Americans, apparently, they packed up middle of the night, left without saying anything. Now, when they went and asked the brigadier general, who's the supposedly commander of the security of the area and the district, he had these comments to say that, oh, they didn't tell us. Okay, fair enough, they didn't tell you, but you probably should have had the idea. And where was the security around the whole Bagram Air Base from the ANA, the Afghan National Army? Because I believe that the general made comments that before the time that the Americans had left, evicted the whole place down, and 2 hours after that, the general got to know about it. The place was looted by some gangs or
I think it's
some thugs of this situation. Now, the general had to say that we thought it was the Taliban, because the Afghan security forces securing the surrounding area of the Bagram Air Base, even they had no idea that they're leaving. Now, when Taliban got to know about this news that the Afghan general thought it was the Taliban looting the place, they actually were slapping each other and saying to each other, dude, we need the shit that they smoke, because That's good, man. That's good. All right. Now, thinking about it, my friend, if the Americans were to call you on every move they did, it would have been a whole different story. When they went to talk to the American government about this whole thing that we were not told, the first people who came out and they had comments about this was the Houdini's family, because Houdini's family wants to sue the U.S. Army for pulling the greatest, the greatest trick after Houdini.
Magic, yeah.
Afghanistan is known for the graveyard of empires, right? The graveyard of empires. Mm-hmm. America made a clean escape from the graveyard, my friend. So Houdini won some freaking franchise out of that. That was the biggest news, I think, coming from Afghanistan. But in the other news is from our BBW on BBC News, exclusively from Rockabul Podcast, we have China. China wants to strengthen their relationship with Afghan government after the Americans have left. Now, China wants to work with them for infrastructure, for construction, for aid, and for military stability. Now, they have offered the Afghan government allegedly $65 billion US. For that, the Afghan Prime Minister has tweeted to the Australian PM saying that 65 billion, how do you like them apples?
Boom!
Boom. Now, the PM from Australia hasn't really bothered, but he has replied with an emoji of banana saying that, mate, we don't care about apples, we have ciders. That was our local news about Afghanistan. On the other news, though, around the world, my friend, there is a lady in New Zealand, metalhead, big rocker, has named her children Metallica, Slayer, and Pantera. Look at that.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah. Like that.
Good choice, man.
That's so cool. And they have named the Metallica kid, the last name is Justice for All, which has been approved by the government. Yeah, that's cool.
It's their best album. So, there you go.
It is their best album. When they went to actually get comments from Metallica about this honor, the rest of the members haven't said anything, but Lars Ulrich wants to sue the lady in her VJ. That's for sure. You cannot produce our freaking albums. And when they went to Dave Mustaine asking him about how come they missed Megadeth, there's Metallica, Slayer, and Pantera. He said only one thing he had to say. He said, it's sad but true. All right, so... All right, so this was our quick news from our BBW on BBC, the big blue whale and big black cockatoo. And that kind of summers up our today's news. So, all right, let's get back to business. Boys, we did a good summary of who we were and what we were doing, for sure. Where did we all started, who we were. We haven't really spoken about what happened when the metal gods disco metal band ZFL came to know Travis the Beard himself on the front lines. I think we should cover that.
Next episode,
next time,
right?
Yeah,
you got to save some. You got to save some kind of suspense for the next episode. Don't kill it all now, man. You've done so well.
You don't
give it all away. Yeah.
Okay. You don't have a say what I kind of make the schedule for this podcast, guys. Telling you, Travis. Yes, you're right, my friend. That's very true. For sure, man. So, this was a good one, boys. Our first Insta Live podcast. Hopefully, people got to listen to some of our little stories from back in the days. Hopefully, someday the youngsters, 20 years from now, will listen to this and they will have the motivation to be walking in the Kabul city with guitars on their shoulders and not caring about jack shit.
Inshallah.
Exactly. That's the purpose of this
Anything
podcast, that
for
we
the
should
end, guys?
encourage, you know.
Do you want to add anything at the end before we pull out? Guys, what do you have at the end, man? What do you
I
have? A
just
message?
I have
Sum
a
it up.
message for the young kids in Afghanistan, you know, like that was the purpose, that when we were talking on the pandemic, that how we could help like an Afghan kids in Afghanistan, that because when we like organized, or when we were trying to create our band, we didn't have the opportunity to buy our instrument, or to have access to a local thing that a musician needs, like amplifier, like guitar, or pick, or whatever, you know, like string stuff. So like for me, like if anybody is like in Afghanistan, they're doing like rock, metal, like any kind of music, like I have any way that I could help them, you know, like even if I could buy them a string, or maybe like a pick, or like anything, like I could help them. That's the message, that they could hit me, you know, hit me up. I will do support them, you know, like in any ways, you know. So that's my message. Whoever's gonna listen to this one. So that was the purpose, that I just want to come here and talk about my experience, and also like the thing that I could do for them in Afghanistan, you know, because now I'm in a place that I could help like Afghan people that who do, like who love metal music or rock music. They want to continue in Afghanistan, that I could support them, you know.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. Love you for that, brother. Travis, you got any last words for today's episode?
I was on the phone with my mother this morning. We're talking about babies, renovations, when we're going to see each other after lockdown and all that. And I said, look, Mom, I've got to go, you know, finish the phone call. And just as I was about to hang up, she goes, oh, I saw the news about Afghanistan. What do you think? And I went, Mum, you don't finish the phone call with that question, because it's just not that simple, right? So, of course, we started talking about the situation. And, you know, my sort of point I'm trying to get at is that it's so complex. It was complex back when the Americans first invaded or liberated, however you see it. And it's still as complex, if not more complex now. So my message to the people out there is, don't just read the mainstream media and think, oh, this is how it is. It's not. There's so much more going on there, and you need to read deeper, and you need to read more diverse opinions on the situation. Talk to Afghans about the situation, because just because the Americans left, it's not over, and it doesn't mean that the situation is going to get better or worse. It's super, super complex. So please don't forget about Afghanistan, is what I'm trying to say, just because the Americans have left.
Beautiful, man. Thank you for that.
Good.
Hearing that from a Westerner should be a lesson to the Afghans around the world as well. This statement that you had to give was, you put it in very simply, but it has a massive back story to it, or I should say, it has a philosophy to it that the Afghans all around the world should understand that and should point that out and talk about it. So thank you very much for that, and we all hope that yes, there would be stable life, at least for at least the poor people in there, regardless of the Americans being in there and whatnot. The mistake that people have made, politicians or the civilians, is they thought that they were there to live forever. No one wants to put their sons out in the midway across the world in the danger, just so what? They were never gonna stay there forever. We didn't really need them to stay there forever. They had to leave someday. Now, sooner or later they did, be it during the light of the day or the middle of the night. The general probably wanted to hug them and kiss them goodbye, but they're not into that, my friend. They just packed up. They told you 6 months ago, a year ago, that we're leaving. So yeah, accept that. Ta-da, bye-bye, and make sure you're not asleep, my friend general. You should be awake and knowing what's happening in your country, in your city, in your command. You cannot expect people to call you that we're coming in or going. If you think that you couldn't even tell the difference between some looting thugs looting a military base to national enemy, global enemy number one, Taliban. You couldn't see the difference in that? Then, my friend, I think I would do a better job in your chair. I believe so. Or smoking. Stop smoking that shit,
I
man.
think he was
Or just
smoking
share with us.
chas, man.
Or just share with us. Yeah, that was a
Some
good one.
chas, man.
He's smoking.
He was probably
So,
smoking before 12 o'clock as well. That's the problem. That's
He
probably
was
what
too
happened.
high.
But the Americans left at 3 a.m. and he was smoking by 6 a.m. and he fucked up with everything. Man.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah, you
And
learned your lesson.
he blamed the Americans. So, yep.
So yeah, I would try to not to kind of blow up like this a lot of times, but it just hurts. It just hurts when people in power talk like that. Anyway, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the people who were here and who will listen to this. We will come back next week, probably the same day. We will let you guys know. My last words for today is that don't give up. Never give up.
Yep.
Society, people do not control your creativity. Rebellion through creativity is the way to go. That has never stopped and it can never stop you. Keep it real.
Correct.
Be motivated. Go for what you want to do. Rockabul Podcast. This is Lamar. Guys, Travis the man. We're going to see you soon next time. Podcast out.
Peace out, man.
Peace out.
Boom.
Boom. You're alive.